Happy to have Pamela Chappell back with us, Reverend, and she's going to have some music, some words of wisdom, and a new beginning is her solo tonight. So let's please welcome Pamela.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I was going to sing A New Beginning, but I've had a change of heart.
Me too.
Yeah, you have, haven't you, Pete? I've talked to so many people who have lost loved ones this year. 2019. We're hoping for a better year in 2020. But when we're talking about wonders, miracles, and mysteries, this song just came to me and I want to share it with you. They talk about a tunnel and a great white light, and loving ones to greet us on the other side. And they talk about the feeling of never-ending love. If that's what dying's like, then it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. If that's what dying's like, then it's wonderful. And we are left behind to struggle with our grief and wonder why our loved one had to go. Yet maybe we can find just a little peace of mind in knowing where they are and that it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. We know where they are and it's wonderful. We are not our bodies, there is more waiting for us through the open door. And we will be united once again, where there is heaven and there's bliss, and there's so much more than this. We will be together and it's wonderful. They talk about a tunnel and a great white light, and loving ones to greet us on the other side. And they talk about the feeling of everlasting love. If that's what dying's like, then it's wonderful. So, I wonder what you wonder about. The word wonder has come up a lot for me today, and it will not this evening. I wonder what you wonder about. And I think it is wonderful that we have so many things that we don't fully understand, don't fully comprehend. It's like God or Spirit or whatever name you want to give to that divine presence has some surprises for us. And that keeps us growing in our lives and in our spirituality. I have this sense that once we leave this body and we're on the other side, we understand a lot more than we do now. Mm-hmm. So, what I'd like to do today is talk to you about miracles and mysteries. I'm going to talk a little bit about miracles first, a little bit about mysteries, and then I'm going to share with you some miracles/mysteries from my own experience. So, miracles, definition. An extraordinary and welcome event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws and is therefore attributed to a divine agency. Definition number 2, a remarkable event or development that brings very welcome consequences. And definition 3, supernatural signs and prophecies. It was interesting to me that when I started studying metaphysics, the name Albert Einstein came up very often. I didn't realize that he was really kind of, in addition to being an incredible scientist, he was also a metaphysician. And so I'd like to share with you one of his quotes. Maybe you've heard this. There are only 2 ways to live your life. One is though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. I love that. So when I started thinking, by the way, John needed a title for this talk, and I just thought, oh, I'm always fascinated with miracles and mysteries, so I just threw the name out. I had no idea what I was going to talk about. But I've been thinking about it ever since. I've been just kind of, it's like planting a seed, and then you see what comes up, right? Okay. So when I thought about miracles, one of the first things that came to my mind, of course, are the miracles in the Bible. You know, Moses parting the Red Sea, and Jesus healing the lepers, and the making blind people see, and the lame people walk, and Jesus walking on water, and all of that. Now, some people believe in a literal translation of the Bible, and others believe that that is all symbolic, and it makes a difference of how you look at it. But I think there's some richness in those stories for us. We also have places where miracles tend to happen. The most famous, of course, is Lourdes in France, where in 1858, a 14-year-old girl came across a vision of the Virgin Mary. And she was near a river, and the Virgin Mary asked her to drink from this river. It was all muddy, but it became clear, and she drank from the river. And that began a whole process of healing that has gone on ever since then, over 150 years. Over 200 million people have gone to Lourdes to experience healing. Now, how many of them were actually healed by the waters? How many of them were actually healed? And if they were they healed by the waters or by their own intention to be healed? Now, you probably know that the Catholic Church has a very strict regimen that they follow to determine whether something is really a miracle. And to be a pope or a saint, you have to have, caused miracles to happen, right? Well, the Catholic Church has identified and documented 69 cases that they say are definitely miracles that have occurred at Lourdes. Here's another idea in terms of miracles. When you go home, if you have a computer and you do that sort of thing, Google angel sightings. I did that a couple days ago, and you'll see the most amazing things. There are photographs of inside hospitals, and off in the corner is this kind of ethereal shape. There are incidents that have been documented where, say, somebody was pinned underneath an automobile when their jack slipped. They were changing their tire and the jack slipped. And somebody comes along to help them lift the car off the person that's pinned underneath. And then they look around and that person is completely gone. I mean, you could go on. There are many, many, many examples of people in situations where they were sure that there was some kind of angel intervention. Actually, it was angel sightings. That's what I Google. I recommend that you do that. Another thing that may be considered a miracle is an experience that took place in July of 1993 in Washington, D.C., when 4,000 people who had been trained in transcendental meditation converged upon D.C. to enter into a meditative practice, because they hypothesized that with that many people meditating and trying to raise the consciousness in that level, that the crime level would drop in that city during that time. And so they did that, and they had a 7-member project review board of independent scientists and so forth who gathered all the data. Prior to this, they even made allowances for weather, because weather can affect the crime rate, and they followed these research protocols, and they determined that the maximum decrease in homicides, rapes, and assaults during that period was 23%. They also hypothesized that if there were 4,000 people who did that on a continuing basis over a matter of time, that the long-term effect would have been 48%. Imagine that. And so we think that when we meditate, when we pray, that doesn't really matter. But it's like dropping a drop of ink into a glass of water and then dropping another drop and another drop and another drop. It makes a difference. And to me, that's a miracle. We have what I would consider miracles of Hamid Bey. We have the miracles of spiritual healing, Reiki, laying on of hands, therapeutic touch, all those different schools of healing where people have experienced not just spiritual healing, but at times physical healing as well. So many of the modern miracles that we experience right now are interconnected with science. My husband is a modern miracle. He is walking around with another person's heart inside his body and has been doing that for 11 and a half years. I don't know about you, but he's my miracle man. I think that's a miracle. Yay, Pete. For many, many years, polio was a dreaded disease, and people were crippled and died from this disease. And now, through science, it's been all but eradicated. Right? To me, that's a miracle. We have people who have died, been clinically dead. Pete is one of them, and then been revived. To me, that's a miracle. We have gene mapping. We have video chats. I mean, I can pick up my phone and talk to Pete's son and wife and their new baby. Well, that baby doesn't talk very much yet. He was born Christmas Eve. But we can talk to them in Japan with something we hold in our hands. I mean, think about it. 20, 30 years ago, we would have thought that was impossible. Even seeing somebody and talking to them would seem impossible. We can carry computers in our watches if we have enough money. And then we have artificial intelligence. We have Siri and Alexa. We can say, Alexa, what's the weather going to be like today? And she'll tell us the temperature. Yeah. To me, that's an absolute miracle. In contemporary life, our bar for what we consider to be a miracle, though, is very, very high. There are so many miraculous things happening all around us that sometimes we don't even take notice. And the things we might not notice that I think are the greatest are things like a beautiful sunset over Lake Michigan. If somebody were to paint it exactly as it is, somebody else would look at it and say, that doesn't look real. It's so phenomenal. And then there's the miracle of a baby chick pecking its way out of the shell. Or of a caterpillar turning into a chrysalis and then a butterfly. What could be more miraculous than that, it's all around us. A baby being born. A person dying. You may have someone who's talking with you, who's moving, who's doing all the things that live people do, and then moments later, that's gone. Their body's there, but somehow the essence of who they are is gone. I think that's a miracle. Now, the great philosopher John Bon Jovi once said, miracles happen every day. Change your perception of what a miracle is, and you'll see them all around you. And then this is another comment that I don't know where I got it, but I just love it. So here it is. And if you know, tell me so I can credit where it came from. We live on a blue planet that circles around a ball of fire next to a moon that moves the sea, and you don't believe in miracles? Okay, so that's miracles. Now we get to mystery, and there's a lot of overlap, of course. Many miracles are mysterious, but not all mysteries are miracles, right? So a mystery is defined as something that is difficult or impossible to understand or explain, something that's beyond human understanding. And the funny thing is that the better we get at technology, the fewer mysteries there are in the world. But there are still tons and tons of mysteries. And I'm not talking about the run-of-the-mill mystery like, where did I leave my keys? or how is it that there's always one sock that doesn't have a mate when you do the laundry, huh? That kind of thing. No, I'm talking about things like, what really happened to Amelia Earhart and where was she? You know,
Yeah, that's the sock monster that lives in the dryer.
who was Jack the Ripper? When I looked up mysteries, by the way, I found some really, really grim stories. So I was looking for ones that weren't that grim. The construction of the pyramids, as Pete said. Who killed JFK? What happened to Jimmy Hoffa? And where is, or what is, or was it really true that there was an Atlantis, a Lemuria? And if so, where? And what happened to them? And is there any legacy they left for us behind? This is one of my favorite mysteries. How do placebos work? You know, you take this sugar pill and you feel better. You know, what's the mind-body connection? What's the mechanism there that's going on that makes that happen, huh? And then there's one of Pete's favorites. UFOs, Bigfoot, ley lines. Do you all know about ley lines? You know, those magnificent lines that connect significant historical and spiritual sites on the planet where energy is really concentrated. How does that work? How did that happen? How do we understand that, you know? And there's death. There's death. So one of our best friends died Christmas Eve. We had been with her 3 days before. And here she was, and now she's not there anymore, you know? And what happens to her? Where is she now? What's going on? I have a lot of thoughts about that, but much of it is still clothed in mystery. And when we talk about death, there's the mystery of mediumship. Claudia knows all about this. Claudia was there when I was at the very beginning of my walk as a medium. And I believe in it 100%. I don't understand how it happens, but I don't know that I need to. But imagine, if you haven't experienced this, imagine being able to communicate with someone who has left their body and passed on. That's both a mystery and a miracle. And what about channeling? People who bring in these wonderful messages from masters. How exciting is that, huh? And that leads into intuition and psychic phenomenon and ESP and all of that. It's mystery and it's fascinating. And I want to know as much as I can about it. And one of the areas that I think is the most mysterious is the area of time. And we come back to Albert Einstein, who said, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. You know, he described time as a river, and that we were just kind of plopped down in that river in one spot. But the river goes around the bend this way, and that may be the future, that goes around this way, and that may be the past, and that was all happening at the same time. And that is so wild, I can't even wrap my head around it. But it's fascinating. It's just something else that Albert Einstein said. Two things are infinite, the universe and human stupidity. And I'm not sure about the universe. So I wanted to share with you a couple of miracles/mysteries that happened to me, okay? And I swear these are absolutely true 100%. May 13th, 1980, I was an educator. I was teaching teachers about what to do with really bright kids in their classroom that needed a little more challenge. And so I was at a conference up in Traverse City. I lived in Kalamazoo at the time. And I drove up with a colleague, and we were at a resort in Traverse City. It was a 2-day conference, and I really wanted to hear John Feldhusen of Purdue speak because he was this big granddaddy of gifted and talented education. And I really wanted to hear what he had to say. So he was the final speaker of the conference, and we were walking up to the hall, and all of a sudden, I knew that there was something wrong at home, and I had to get home. I didn't know how I knew, but it couldn't have been more clear if there'd been flashing lights, and a billboard saying, "Go home, something's wrong." It was very, very clear. So I turned to my colleague and I said, "Do you mind if we skip this speaker? I've got to get home." And he said, "I thought you wanted to hear John Feldhusen." And I said, "Well, yeah, I do, but I've got to get home. Something's wrong." And he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I don't know. Something's wrong." And he looked at me like, "Yeah, you're crazy, lady." So, but he humored me. He got his stuff. I got my stuff, and he drove. So we got in the car, and we were on the road for about 10 minutes. Now, mind you, it's a good 3-4 hours from Traverse City to Kalamazoo. And about 10 minutes along the way, I was really kind of jangly, and just to distract myself, I turned on the radio, and we learned that a tornado had gone through Kalamazoo. Oh. Just about the time that I had that knowing come to me. Now, we had a 2-year-old son, my husband and I, and he yeah. It works, right? He was a teacher in Constantine, and the school had been closed early because of tornado warnings. So he had driven up from Constantine and gone to the house where our 2-year-old was in daycare. Okay, and just as he got to the front door of the house to pick up Brennan, our little boy, the sirens went off. And he grabbed a couple of kids, and the lady who ran the daycare grabbed a couple of kids, and they went down in the basement, and the tornado came through and took the roof off that house. And dropped a tree right in front of our car and right behind a car, like parentheses. We didn't get our car out for 2 weeks. And this was only about 3 blocks from our home. So I'm in the car, and I hear that there's this tornado that came through Kalamazoo, and they're describing its path, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's where Brennan is, and that's where our house is, and and so we got a little closer, and the street was barricaded off and all that. Anyway, everybody in our home, and actually only one person was killed in that tornado, but there was a tremendous amount of damage. That's not the point. The point is, how did I know? Yeah. That was the first time anything that vivid had ever come to me, and all I could think of afterwards was, wow, there are other ways of knowing. There are other ways of receiving information. And it created this incredible curiosity in my mind that continues till today. That really happened. Second story. My second son was 14. This is years later. And he had fallen into using drugs. And I was a single mom at that time and desperately trying to get him on a better path. So it's 10 o'clock at night on a school night, and we're at home. Now, I have to tell you that I inherited my parents' home, and my dad had been an invalid in the last few years of his life. So there was one of those chairlifts to take him upstairs. My mom was afraid he'd fall down the stairs. So there was a chairlift there. That was still there, even though both my parents had died. The chairlift was there. I used to take laundry up sometimes. So the chairlift was down at the bottom of the stairs, and we were in the foyer of our house right next to that. And my son wanted to go out and hang out with his friends. 10 o'clock, school night. I said, "No, you're not going anywhere. It's a school night. You're going to stay home." And he got very, very angry with me. In retrospect, I think he was high on something, and he started screaming at me. "I hate you. You're the most horrible mother in the world. I wish you'd die." Now, my sister had taught me a trick of taking an imaginary glass jar, like a canning jar, and imagining it's over me so that none of this could attack me, right? And so that I could stay as calm as possible, but it was getting really, really hard to not get sucked into that energy, And he's just going at it like crazy. And in the middle of his tirade, my dad's chairlift started going up the stairs all by itself. Oh, gosh. Wow. We both looked at it, and my son shut his mouth. And he went upstairs to bed. Now, first I'm thinking, I believe in spirit intervention. I believe in angel intervention, that they want to help us, but I know it's not easy, Yeah. And I wanted to believe that my dad had somehow managed to come and move his chair up there. But part of me said, what if there's a short in that chair? And it just was a coincidence, you know? So I actually had the guy who installed it come and take a look at it. There was no short in that chair. Is that a miracle? I call that a miracle. One other quick story. I was just beginning to study. No, I'm sorry. I was just curious about spiritualism. If you don't know about spiritualism, the spiritualist churches are very much like other Protestant churches with one exception, and that is that part of their service involves the minister giving messages to people in the congregation. Then they're like little lasered messages, little lasered readings. They might say, lady in the red coat, your mother comes through and she says such and such or whatever, you know. It's really wonderful. And I had heard about this place in Benton Harbor where they had a spiritualist church. And a friend and I went to check it out. This was shortly after my mother died, and Mom and I were really close. And so we went. It was a very small church. There were probably a dozen people there. And I talked to the minister ahead of time, introduced myself to her, and I told her my mother had died recently and all that. And we went through the service, and it was very nice. Now, afterwards, there was the option of having a one-on-one with the minister, and if we wanted a reading for a small donation to the church. So I asked for that. I'm still skeptical. I don't know if this is for real. You know, you have to be careful about frauds out there. You never know. So she began her reading with me. And she said, your mother comes through. And she's very tender. She has a lot of love for you. And part of me is saying, yes, I know. And part of me is saying, yeah, that's kind of easy for you to figure out, right? And then she says, I don't want you to feel like you need to cry. She said, I'm fine and I'm moving forward and I'm happy. But if you need to cry, that's all right. And then the person, her name was Margie, who gave me the message, said, your mother gives you a handkerchief and it has a a blue crocheted border around the edges. Well, my mother gave my sister a white handkerchief with a lavender crocheted border around it, but she had given me the one with the blue crocheted border on it, and that got my attention. And it was like the tornado thing. It was like, there is something here, and I really want to know more about it. And I wanted to know how that connected with God, how that connected with spirit. What was the whole thing going on here? It wasn't just a psychic experience. It was a spiritual experience I was looking for. And it enriched my life 100-fold. So when I asked you earlier, I wonder what you wonder about, I've told you some things that I wonder about. And that's why I sang the song, Wonderful. When our friend died, we've lost 11 friends in 2019. And I wonder why. I'll tell you something. Our dear friend Carl Franklin, that many of you know, told me that a lot of souls have chosen to leave at this time for two reasons. One is to avoid the chaos and that's here and coming. And the other is so that they can be helpful from the other side. I believe that, and I'm so grateful for that because it's wonderful. Namaste.